So we can choose an AEB using 3 shots with 1 stop of exposure between each of the shots. But we can often select half stop increments or even 2 stops. But 3 shots, 1 stop apart is going to meet most of our needs, I think. AEB is a good technique when we're working fast, maybe at dawn or dusk when that special light doesn't last too long. Or sometimes we can be taking photos in tricky lighting and contrasty lighting conditions where getting the very best exposure can be a bit difficult. AEB gives us a degree of confidence that we will take home an image we can work with. You may need your instruction book to set this up because with AEB, one of my Canon cameras can be set up via buttons on the body of the camera and the other is set up via the menu system. Let's take a look at a typical menu from a camera, but maybe just a little bit larger than normal. So once the AEB option is selected, the bracketing is usually set up via a scroll wheel on the back of the camera or a rocker switch, and you can see in our example how the markers can be moved out to the desired positions. Here I've just selected the first increment, but we can go to 1 stop or maybe even 2 stops. So although we can set up a bracketed exposure of 2 stops, and some cameras may even allow you to go further than that, I'm going to suggest that in most cases a bracketed exposure with just 1 stop between each is going to meet most of our needs. Now once automatic exposure bracketing is set up, the settings will be repeated on the top plate of your camera, as you can see here bottom left. And of course when we bring the camera to our eye, we'll see the AEB displayed to us in the viewfinder too. So we frame up on our subject, and as we press the shutter button, an image will be captured at each of the exposures set in the AEB. Now when we take the first shot, generally speaking it's going to be the shot where the camera believes the exposure is right, but some cameras will even allow you to change the order in which your bracketed images appear. When we take the next shot, what we've got here is the second of the bracketed exposures, 1 stop up or overexposed, or an increase in exposure is a better term I think. And you can see that's been achieved by the shutter speed being reduced to 125th of a second. When the third shot is taken, of course we have to reduce the exposure, and to do that we've speeded up the 250th of a second that was originally there to 500, so we've got our 3 shots taken. Remember, if you're shooting in aperture priority mode and you set up automatic exposure bracketing, then the 3 bracketed exposures will affect only the shutter speed, and vice versa if you've selected shutter priority as your choice. The fact that exposure compensation has been used can also be seen on the LCD as you view the images taken, and also in your image editor via the metadata. Here we can see how AEB is shown to us in Photoshop's bridge, but it will be much the same in other editors too. If you look up at the white panel at the top left of the screen, you can see how the computer displays the fact that the first shot shown here had 1 stop more exposure given to it. We just get the +1. The next shot is the one the camera felt was correct, and this one is 1 stop less exposure. And as I said, some cameras even allow you to change the order these are taken. There are a couple of other things we can do with automatic exposure bracketing. If we select continuous shooting along with our AEB and frame up on a shot, if we gently squeeze the shutter button, all three shots will be fired automatically and the camera will stop when the third shot is taken. If we release the pressure and fire again, then another three shots is taken, and so on. It's a great technique to use in conjunction with the back button focus, the AF on option, or with live view. There are also times when we may take our three shots and find that the exposure is still a little too far towards underexposure or overexposure, in this case under. Using the exposure compensation dial or rocker switch that we talked about in another video, we can scroll all three shots of the automatic exposure bracketing range either up or down the exposure scale. Here I've moved it down, here I've moved it up. Automatic exposure bracketing will remain selected on your camera until you either change it yourself or you turn the camera off. When you turn the camera back on sometime later, you will need to reset the AEB if you need it. If you allow your camera to go into sleep mode, so a touch of the shutter button wakes it up, then the automatic exposure bracketing settings will be retained, and that's quite useful when you're moving around a scene. And finally, if you make a mistake and only take maybe 2 images of a 3-image bracket, the exposure indicator will flash on the top plate and also in the viewfinder, just as a reminder that you've got one more shot to take, or 2 as the case may be.